Union of European Federalists. Since February 24th, the sovereign state of Ukraine is under Russian attack. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that the Ukraine shares and defends our European values. Ukrainian people want to live in a peaceful democracy and that Ukraine deserves our solidarity. The EU has taken many measures by now to help the Ukraine and has imposed many sanctions to weaken Russia's power. In the upcoming minutes, we will take a closer look at those measures and sanctions. Please welcome Sandro Gozi, member of the European Parliament and president of the Union of European Federalists. Hello. Let's start with the first set of sanctions, the EU-wide travel ban and asset freeze concerning Russian individuals and Russian entities. On top of that, Russian banks are being removed from SWIFT, the world's dominant global interbank payment system. How do you think all these freezing of money, funds and assets, as well as the travel ban, can affect the invasion of the Ukraine?
I think that they are absolutely important. I think that there are three aspects that we have to consider in this crisis, and which are all very important. The first aspect is the fact that we are keeping, and I think we are strengthening our unity. Our unity as European Union, as our unity as NATO members, our unity as world of democracy and rule of law. And this is absolutely important, and we have absolutely to interpret this historical moment to push the European Union to take those important decisions which we have been waiting for a long time as federalists, a political union, a defense union, an energy union, a real foreign policy, a real Europe of defense. We will come back, I'm sure, during the question about all this issue, but this was the most important message that a president of the Union of European Federalists I wanted to convey at the beginning of this discussion. Then the economic sanction. There again, what shall we do? Either we do a military war or we do an economic war. We opted wisely not to go for a military war. So we have to declare an economic war to Russia. And to declare an economic war to Russia, we have to use all the tools at our disposal. We have to isolate Russia economically, financially, and this is why also decisions such as the issue of SWIFT, this network, international network on banking, was of the utmost importance because it contributes to really weaken the economic and financial position of Russia. And I think that we have to continue to keep this pressure because I think that it's a very powerful tool against Putin, against his regime. And I hope also that that creates also an internal development in Russia.
Thank you. Secondly, there is the very important energy sector. There are also sanctions such as a ban of exporting refining technologies into the EU. And also the Nord Stream 2 pipeline project is held on ice. On the other hand, the EU is depending massively on Russian oil and gas. Germany gets, for example, about 40% of its oil from Russia. Austria gets even up to 80% of its gas from Russia. About 20 EU states are depending on Russian oil and gas. How can Europe act in the future to avoid such a high dependency?
But this is another missing part of the European integration. We know that we don't have an energy union. We have finally learned, and I would say the most important ally, the public opinion is now fully aware of the fact that, one, we don't have an energy union. We don't have a European market, a really integrated European market for energy, and we are too heavily dependent on Russia. And it is clear that this must push the European Union to a very, very strong acceleration in this sector. We have to accelerate and finally to do what we have been saying for a long time without doing it. That means to diversify the energy provision toward the European Union And we have also to really integrate the internal market of energy. We have to buy energy together. We have to develop a single buyer approach as European Union when it comes of energy. And also at the same time, we have even to further accelerate the energy transition, which is linked to the ecological transition and to the Green Deal. All this issue we knew already. We have launched a very ambitious agenda on sustainable energy, but now we have really to build up a truly union of energy, which is a vital issue for us from the for our geopolitical position, but also for the sustainability of our economy and also for our families and for our firms, which now already are paying a too heavy price because of this crisis, but also because of this lack of a real energy union. Time is now.
Another topic where more union is in question concerns the military forces, the defense forces. The EU provides 500 million euros for weapons and for gear to the Ukraine. How do you see the future of the European security and military forces? Where can that lead us?
Well, I mean, as a colleague of mine said today, and it was very right, I think that Vladimir Putin, the dictator Putin, is acting like a new founding father of the European Union. Because, I mean, what Putin is making happening, it has never happened. Finally, we are talking about a European power. Finally, we are talking about the serious necessity and urgency to create European joint military forces. It is a fight that we, the federalists, we have been doing for a long time. It is a priority of the French presidency for Emmanuel Macron since he was campaigning in 2016 to become president of France, and now is acting as president of the Council of the European Union. There are documents, there are proposals, there is a work that the High Representative for Foreign Policy is doing. Now we have to turn our words into deeds. And it is time, and I hope it will happen in March, to take serious bold step towards European joint force approach. We have to create a European force for rapid intervention, starting with 5,000 soldiers, but it will be a very important step ahead. We have to fully exploit all the possibilities that the treaty gives us to create a dynamic group of countries which are like-minded and want to advance and to integrate into the defense industry, to develop joint projects, to develop a real military capability. And also we have to decide get rid of the veto in foreign policy and defense policy, to decide by majority, and to give us on one side the capability instrument, on the other side the decision-making tools to fully assume our responsibility as European power. And this would go also in the right direction in the context of our transatlantic alliance, because after all, if we want to be less dependent on the United States, we have to assume our responsibility, and that would certainly help also our credibility and our influence in the context of the transatlantic alliance and of NATO. And this would be really, it is a possible revolution, because we can unite the word Europe with the word power. Of course, in a democratic way. Of course, with our procedure. Of course, with the role for the European Parliament. Of course, under democratic surveillance at European and national level. But this time of history ask to all of us to assume our responsibility in this field. And this is a major step ahead that we can take. And I think that history will judge us tomorrow according to the decision that we are able to take today in this field.
Another set of measures and sanctions concerns the free flow of goods and information. We have, for example, the closure of the airspace for Russian aircraft. We have the free trade agreements with Russia that are not longer effective. And we have also the closing down of the propaganda channels of Russia, RT and Sputnik. How do you see the effects of the closing of those free-flowing goods and informations?
I think that that is also necessary. When I was saying we have isolated economically, financially Russia, of course, that entails also the measure that you have just mentioned. And I think that this tension is there to stay. I think that we have to equip ourselves first psychologically and then economically, to know that we are entering a period of instability, of tension, that the solution won't be for today or tomorrow. And this is why I think that in parallel to these very tough measures that we are taking against Russia, we have also to give ourselves some solidarity mechanism, because it is clear that the sanctions hit Russia, but they also hit those who impose the sanction. I mean, the space area, the banking isolation, the freeze of export, import-export that you were mentioning. So we have to create a compensation mechanism. We have to do what we have done in a larger scale, what we have done during Brexit. When Brexit happened, there were some territories, some states, some industry sectors which were particularly hit. And we create a Brexit fund to compensate those in the Union who particularly suffered from the Brexit. We have to do the same today. There will be countries, region, sector of the industry that will be particularly affected by the economic sanction. And we have, as we have declared an economic war, we have to give ourselves also the mechanism to ensure economic solidarity within the Union, because that is going to be essential to be able to keep this unity all over the conflict. And I think that this is something that we have to push, and as UEF, we are pushing a lot.
Talking about solidarity.
Sorry. The other aspect. No. Your question also mentioned the fight against disinformation, and this is fundamental. And this is fundamental because we know, I am a member of the Special Inquiry Committee on Foreign Interference and Disinformation within the Union. We know that for years, Russia has heavily interfered in our democratic processes, has heavily interfered in the Brexit referendum, has heavily interfered in the Italian constitutional referendum, has heavily interfered in the presidential election. We know that in the social network, there is a permanent Russian disinformation action. We know that Russia TV and Sputnik were there at the service of disinformation. And in this period of war, in this period of tension, it is important also to protect ourselves from the disinformation attacks, because those were attacks, and also from the cybersecurity. So also from this perspective, I think that finally we are seeing there is not only awareness at EU level to tackle this issue, but there is also the courage, which is the result of the strong need that we have, the real necessity that we have to react. But this is also something very important, and I would say very promising for the next phase.
Thank you so much for that important addition. The last two questions concern the solidarity issue and the future of Ukraine itself. Von der Leyen is strongly supporting the idea of welcoming the Ukraine into the European Union. How do you think, how realistic at this point is it that the Ukraine will be a part of the European Union soon? And what steps have to be taken first before it can happen?
I don't think it is realistic to say that the Ukraine can be a member soon. I think that it is absolutely necessary that we do all we can to fully exploit, first of all, the association agreement that we have with Ukraine, because there are strong opportunities also to prepare and to organize a progressive integration of Ukraine into the European Union single market. This is something which is very important. Another way of strongly helping the Ukrainians. And it is clear that Ukraine has a European perspective, as any European member state has. But we know that the treaty foresees a very long process for the accession, and the accession is based on the own merit of each country, on rule of law, democratic principle, fights against corruption, etc. So I don't think it is time to raise expectation that we cannot meet in the short run. It is time to strongly support Ukraine, provide Ukraine with a strong political, economic, and military support. And the first time in its history, the European Union is paying also military support to Ukraine. We have to confirm the long-term European perspective, but it is not time to raise expectation, because it is not time to create frustration. It is time also to be serious, to be rational, to respond to the crisis, not with emotions, but with real deeds on one side. On the other side, also to lay down rationally the terms of the European future of Ukraine, which is there, but that we have to handle with credibility and responsibility.
Thank you so much. And here comes the last question, also concerning solidarity, this time on an individual level. Another measure to help the Ukraine concerns the refugees and the asylum rights. Poland and Romania, for example, they've already took hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees. Italy has also taken a lot. The EU now wants to cancel the EU asylum procedure for Ukrainian refugees and guarantee every war refugee a 3-year period of protection in the EU. How effective do you see these measures when it comes to immediate humanitarian help?
I think that it is clear that we are talking about real political refugees, because these are people who are fleeing from a war. And I think that we have to provide immediately temporary protection according to our rules to all those who are trying to save in their life, fleeing away from a war. I think that we have to do today in favor of our Polish friends what they refused to do in favor of Italy or other country in 2014, 2015, where at the time also there were flows of potential asylum seekers, and Poland and Hungary refused any form of solidarity to Italy, to Malta, to Greece. I think that we don't have to commit the same unacceptable mistake that was made by Warsaw and by Budapest in 2014-2015. We have to show full solidarity to Poland, to Romania, and we have to push in order to be sure that the Polish government this time will learn the lesson. And the next time will provide solidarity to the country which are exposed to the kind of flows. Yesterday, they refused to provide solidarity. Today, are asking for solidarity. Tomorrow, I hope they will be ready to provide solidarity.
So thank you so much for this very informative short question and answer session. To sum it up, what would be your personal view on the situation? What is your view on Ukraine, on Russia, on Europe's future? Your closing statement, please.
My closing statement is very clear. We are living in an absolutely extraordinary time where on one side, we are taking on our responsibility to fight to respond to attack, which is the Russian attack, not only to Ukraine, but to all of us, to our principles, to our values. It's an attack against democracy, rule of law, fundamental rights, the freedom of a people to choose its own destiny. And so we are taking all the measures that we have been discussing so far. In the same time, there is a process which is called Conference on the Future of the Union. And there are 800 citizens that have already asked to create a European defense joint forces to decide to have a real common foreign policy, to have a real defense policy, to provide the Union with the means and the capability to defend ourselves. Well, I mean, we have now to really listen to the citizens' demand, and we have to fully use the Conference on the Future of the Union for a bold reform of the European Union in order to have really an effective European diplomacy, an effective European defense policy. You know, someone who cannot be considered as a founding father of the Union, Bismarck, used to say that diplomacy without arms is like music without instruments. And it is time to provide us with military capability and diplomatic credibility. It is possible. There is a strong need at our borders, in our continent. There is a strong demand from our citizens. Let's take on our responsibility and make it. The Union of European Federalists is strongly committed to go and to push toward this direction.
Thank you so much, and lots of energy to you and your fellow members of the European Parliament in the upcoming days and weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Union of European Federalists.